I want to talk to you about my friend Charlie Crawford. He's a 10-time NFR qualifier.
Charlie Crawford, time to just shake it out and win. Got it on him fast, set
there
up.
We are.
Here's a day
Nice
money
run.
lead. You betcha 3-8.
That's an absolute perfect run. Timing was perfect from the time the first swing is up. He's got the control. Charlie made it happen by being timed up with his horse with the steer, and being able to not just rope, but to pick that steer's head up without changing the momentum for the heeler at all.
We know his beautiful wife, Jackie, all three of their beautiful children, the founder of the Liberty and Loyalty Foundation, which this year will exceed $1 million raised for military and first responders. I've said it 1,000 times. Charlie, it's time to rope, nod and ride, whip and spur. I want to welcome you to the Charlie Crawford Podcast. Let's ride.
Now, the next part is technique. Technique can also create a roping slump. You know, if there's flaws in your foundation and how you're roping, if you don't have a very good swing, that's going to create a lot of inconsistencies. If you're not right in a good spot, those are flaws in your fundamentals. Not getting a good start, you know, not being consistent with that. So get the fundamentals correct. Create solid fundamentals. We preach that so much in our clinics. I preach that. I make sure that everyone can hit all the fundamentals that they can do right there and prepare for. So when they're high called, that's what we stress. You've got to have that first. Now from there, as you keep advancing, the more correct your technique is, the more you'll be able to expand. But if there's a flaw in there, you're only going to max out. You're going to max out and you're going to peak out. So make sure those fundamentals are correct. Another thing that can happen is an anticipation of the next step. If you anticipate that step a little early, to me, that's what can create a flaw in your technique. To me, I think that happens the most. Tin Cup, that's probably the most epic meltdown ever. And I love that movie because we've all been there, where all of a sudden the shanks, they come out of nowhere. You know, you don't even want to say it. If you watch the movie and they're like, Holmes, what's going on here? Oh, you know, take another swing, you know. They don't even want to talk about it. He's like, hey, what's going on? He's like, you know, the S word. And he's like, what do you mean? You know, the El Jose? You know, the shanks? You know, they don't even want to say it because they don't even want to touch it. Well, when the shanks just show up, you know, when he puts his hat on backwards and ties his shoe in a double knot and puts his change in his other pocket, you know, so sometimes like they're getting your mind off of some of the things that can also create it, but you've got to get underneath of what the problem is. Otherwise, it's going to happen again. And in my opinion, is usually if you're delivering a little early, or you're pulling your slack a little fast, or your hand's getting ahead of your tip, you know, a lot of those little things right there, you're anticipating the start before it gets there. Those are little things where you're anticipating that step before it gets there. So sometimes you have to have eyes on yourself. I always created making sure that I had my environment to where people always wrote better than me. And I always keep their strengths right there handy, because if I had a flaw, I wanted their strengths, because usually whatever their strengths were my weaknesses. And so those little things right there where they have that eye to where you're anticipating the start. That's why you're breaking out. You're pulling too much. That's why you're late. You know, whatever it is, we're anticipating a step earlier that's creating a flaw in your technique. So you've got to be able to get underneath those and figure out what those things are so you can get back on track. And that's, like I say, that's a lot of where the learning is. And preparation for me was always what gave me confidence. I have a box at my house that I can make up to 15 feet wide and 8 foot narrow on my width. I've got a box that I can get up to 13 feet narrow lengthwise to 22 feet like the World Series barrier in Vegas. So I make sure that wherever I'm headed, I can measure my boxes the same as where I'm going. So when I would get ready for San Antonio, I had a neck rope and a barrier and a trash box that I could set up, sitting right there ready to go, where I could set that thing even or one under. I could measure my boxes 10 feet wide, 16 foot deep, to where I could get enough reps in before I got to the place where I was going, so that when I got there, the only thing that changed was the environment. That's it. My timing was right. My feel was right. My preparation was good. I felt confident because I was prepared. And I had enough steers in my practice pen that no matter what I drew, that I made those runs at home enough times where I was like, go through my playbook. Okay, steer steps left. I know exactly what to see and where to go and how to shape them up. Steer goes right. Same thing. I know exactly where to go, exactly how to shape them up. And that's the preparation. That's what gives you experience. To me, that's what gets you ready. So before the World Series finals, if I'm going there, I think it's 12 foot wide and 22 foot long box. So I'm setting that up at home. I want to get some good reps in. I want to know how fast are those steers going when I get in the 8.5 or the 7.5. They're not going to be going very fast. Now, when I get up to the 11 and 12, those steers are going to start stepping up a little bit. So I got to make sure I have steers pretty close to what I'm about to rope there. That way I can see where I'm at. I can see where my roping's at. And if it's not hitting on all cylinders, good chance you're going to need to get some help and find out what those little technique errors are to get you prepared for where you're going. So, in my opinion, preparation is what gave me confidence, and those were good ways that I developed my preparation at home to where when I got to the competition, I felt ready. Some good knowledge that you guys can have. A podcast with Joe Rogan, hashtag number 1943 with Joel Turner. That was a great one. It was on archery. I like shooting and archery because the focus that has to be developed in that discipline is intense. And so that's a really good podcast where this guy talks about how he develops his focus to be a disciplined archery. And they say he's one of the best archery coaches there is. Books with winning in mind by Lanny Basham. I really like the book. They have an audio book I think now out too. Same thing, Focus, the preload. How to trust the process, develop processes on how he created his techniques. He also has a course up there in Flower Mound just above Fort Worth that I've been to. Me and Trey Johnson have been to those courses. I've taken the girls to their courses before. Really good. It's a great 2-day clinic. To any question mentally that you could have, you can get answered there. Movies, 7 Days in Utopia. That's a great one. The book's even better. Any golf movie you can kind of watch, you're always going to get something out of it. There's a lot of things that can relate with golf and roping. Back to books again would be Peaks and Valleys. When you're peaked out and then when you drop down and your performance drops and takes a sink and you're down in the valleys, how to get back up to your peak performance. That's a really good book, real easy to read, not very long. Inner Game of Tennis, another good mental book. Self 1, Self 2, and then Mind Gym. Just be able to keep studying those things. You're going to learn something from all of them. And that should help you get out of those slumps. Because remember that the unfortunate part is the slumps is where a lot of the learning comes. So embrace it, figure it out, learn from it, and get yourself back to the pay window.